Hey everyone, this is Sam from Prep for Success, and today we're going to go over what makes a complete sentence. Basically, what makes a complete sentence is having a subject as well as a predicate. Now, what's a subject and predicate? A subject is just who or what the sentence is about, and the predicate tells what the subject is doing. So let's keep that in mind and tackle a couple problems. So in this first sentence, we have the third grade teacher taught a class of 30 students. So now, what is this sentence about? Well, it's about the third grade teacher. So that overall is going to be our subject. Now, what did the third grade teacher do? Well, she taught a class of 30 students. So, taught a class of 30 students is going to be our predicate. Now, there's also something called a simple subject and a simple predicate. And those are exactly what it sounds like. It's a subject, but simplified, and the predicate simplified. So now, what does that mean? Well, that means that here we have our subject, which is the third grade teacher. But overall, all it's talking about is the teacher. So teacher is going to be our simple subject. Now, the entire predicate is taught a class of 30 students. However, overall, what did she do? She taught. So taught is going to be our simple predicate. So basically, the sentence boils down to the teacher taught. However, the entire sentence is the third grade teacher taught a class of 30 students. So everything else is kind of additional information. However, the main structure is the teacher taught. But either way, we can see that this is a complete sentence because we have a subject and we have a predicate. So this is in fact a complete sentence. Now our next one, we have the extremely tall basketball player blocked the tiny grandma's view. So now this one's a little bit more complicated, but again, we want to see what's the subject and what's the predicate. So here, the subject is the extremely tall basketball player. That's who we're talking about. Now, that is going to be our subject. And now, what did that extremely tall basketball player do? Well, he blocked the view of the tiny grandma. So that entire thing, blocked the tiny grandma's view, is going to be our predicate. Now, again, we want to see what's the simple subject and simple predicate just to simplify this sentence. Well, the extremely tall is just explaining this basketball player, as well as the basketball is just explaining what sport this player actually plays. So player is going to be our simple subject. Now, what did the player do? Well, he blocked the tiny grandma's view. So overall, the player blocked. Therefore, blocked is going to be our simple predicate. So again, whether we're looking at the simple or just the predicate overall, we can see that we do have a subject, we do have a predicate, so this would, in fact, be a complete sentence. Now that we identified what a complete sentence is, there's also some incomplete sentences. And those incomplete sentences are called fragments as well as run-ons. And a fragment is missing a subject or predicate, while a run-on is having an additional subject or predicate, meaning that this only has a subject or only has a predicate. Rather than with a run-on, we have an additional subject or predicate. So we have the original subject and predicate plus another subject or plus another predicate. Or an additional subject as well as an additional predicate within the same sentence. However, there's a couple of exceptions to this rule, meaning occasionally you can have two subjects and two predicates within the same sentence, as long as there's some type of conjoining word, like a conjunction, or a transitional word. For example, if we have the sentence, I went to the mall and I went to the beach, we do technically have two complete sentences there. I went to the mall is a complete sentence, meaning it has a subject and predicate, and I went to the beach also has a subject and predicate. However, since it's linked with that word and, it negates this rule, meaning that we can technically have two subjects and two predicates within that sentence. For example, a compound sentence is still a complete sentence, even though it has two subjects and two predicates. And the reason is because it has a conjunction in between those two complete sentences. So for example, in number 1, here we have, my mom went to the store and she spent a lot of money. So we can notice here that we actually have two subjects. The first one is my mom, and the second one is she. And then we also have two predicates, went to the store, that's our first one, and then spent a lot of money, which is our second predicate. So here we actually have two subjects as well as two predicates. But here it is still considered a complete sentence and not a run-on sentence because we have this and in the middle. So it's conjoining two complete sentences, this as well as this, to make one complete sentence. Now, in our next one, we have Nikki bought 2 bags of chips and she bought 3 boxes of cookies. So again, we have a subject, Nikki. Then we have another subject, she. Then we have bought 2 bags of chips, which is our predicate. And then bought 3 boxes of cookies, which is our predicate. Once again, we could see that here we have a complete sentence because we have a subject and predicate. Here we have a complete sentence because we have a subject and predicate. But since we have this and in the middle of the sentence, this makes it a complete sentence instead of a run-on. Now, we also have one more exception to the rule. And as we discussed before, the rule is that a sentence must have a subject as well as have a predicate to be a complete sentence. But here, if we have a dependent clause, it appears that we have a subject and a predicate. However, it's actually a fragment. It's not going to be a complete sentence. And a dependent clause just means that we have something that can't stand alone. It needs to have an independent clause or a complete sentence attached to it to make it then a full sentence. And a great indication that we have one of these is if we have this word if, because, since, when, as, after, as well as some other words such as that. And these are called subordinate conjunctions. So, for example, we have after my husband went to the gym. Here we have my husband, which appears as the subject. And then what did my husband do? He went to the gym. So that would be our predicate. However, we also have this word after in front. And that is one of these subordinate conjunctions. So anytime that we have after at the beginning of the sentence, there needs to be a second part. Because we would say, after my husband went to the gym, he did something. So considering we don't have that second part of the sentence, this actually would not be a complete sentence, and this would be considered a fragment. Now, our second one is because the chicken makes a lot of noise. So again, since we have this word because of this, something else happened. So even though it appears that we have a subject, which is the chicken, and a predicate makes a lot of noise, we again need the rest of that sentence. Considering that, this would be a fragment as well. So now if we wanted to correct these sentences, we could say something along the lines of, after my husband went to the gym, he was tired. Now, this has the second part of the sentence, so it tells us what happened after her husband went to the gym. Now our next one, we have because the chicken makes a lot of noise. So we could say something like, because the chicken makes a lot of noise, I couldn't sleep. First, let's identify the subject as well as predicate within the sentence. So here we have, my grandma's cookies are delicious, but her lasagna is even better. So in this first part of the sentence, we're talking about my grandma's cookies. So that's the subject. And then are delicious is the predicate. However, we still have a little bit more to this sentence. And we actually have an additional subject and an additional predicate. So here we're talking about her lasagna, which is another subject, as well as our other predicate is even better. So here we have two subjects and two predicates. So initially we would think that this actually isn't allowed, therefore this is a run-on sentence. However, we do have this word but in the middle of the sentence. So but is a conjunction and it's linking two complete sentences. My grandma's cookies are delicious. Now that's a complete sentence. As well as her lasagna is even better is also a complete sentence. But since we have this word but and we're conjoining it with that, this is an acceptable sentence. Now, our next sentence, we have the ambulance corps was celebrating the initiation of their three newest members, John, Samantha, and Michael, the completion of the 5-month EMT school in New York City. So now we want to see, are both of these sentences complete sentences as well as if they're, run-ons or possibly even a fragment. So let's identify the first sentence. So what are we talking about? Well, we're talking about the ambulance corps. So that is going to be our overall subject. Now, what was the ambulance corps doing? Well, they were celebrating the initiation of their three newest members. So this entire thing is going to be our predicate. Now, with this in mind, we also have a little bit of additional information, and these newest members were John, Samantha, and Michael. However, that's kind of irrelevant here because right away we see that we have a subject and see that we have a predicate. So since we have one of each, we have one subject and one predicate, this is going to be a complete sentence. Now, let's look at the next sentence. We have the completion of the 5-month EMT school in New York City. So what are we talking about? Well, we're talking about the completion. So that is our subject. Now, what did the completion do? Well, did the completion 5-month EMT school? No. Did they something about New York? No. So actually, these here are prepositional phrases because of the fact that it starts with a preposition as well as ends with a noun. So here, there's another video titled Prepositions that explains this a little bit more. So gladly take a look at that. However, anytime we know that prepositions are not needed within the sentence, they're actually additional information. So we can cross out this as well as this. And considering we can cross those two things out, we can see that we only have a subject here. There is no predicate. The sentence just boils down to the completion, but what did the completion do? We don't know. So considering there is no predicate, we don't have a predicate within this sentence, this here is what we call a fragment. Now, our next sentence, we have, I was upset my candy bar got stuck in the vending machine. So here, initially, it sounds like a correct sentence. However, let's double check, see if we have subjects, predicates, what do we have kind of going on here? So here we start with I. The sentence is talking about I, and what was I doing? Well, I was upset. So that's our predicate. Now we also have my candy bar got stuck in the vending machine. So here we have another subject, my candy bar. That's a new thing that we're referring to. What did my candy bar do? Well, it got stuck in the vending machine. So here, even though this initially looks like a correct sentence, we actually don't have a sentence here. We have a run-on sentence because we have one subject, one predicate, as well as a second subject and a second predicate. So that makes this a run-on sentence. If we were to correct this, what we can do is we can say, I was upset that my candy bar got stuck. And we don't even need the rest of the sentence because that's a prepositional phrase because we start with in. so we could delete that from the sentence. So the overall structure here is I was upset that my candy bar got stuck. Considering we add this word that, it makes it correct within this sentence because here we now have a transition, which is the word that. So now we have a subject here, a predicate here, a subject here, and a predicate here with a conjunction in the middle, so that makes it okay. However, since we don't have that conjunction here, this would be a run-on sentence and an incorrect. So this one, as well as number 3. So number 2 and 3 would be incorrect, and number 1 would be correct.